what was the last movie that you saw at Bad Axe that was not this film? Like maybe the last film you took in the theater.
I was actually just in Bad Axe last month, and I saw the new Jurassic Park movie.
I'm sorry that was your last one. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm talking to David Siev, the director, and some members of his family, Jaclyn, Chun, and Rachel Siev, who are all stars of the movie Bad Axe, which is screening at the DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival on July 17, 2022. And we're going to talk to them right now. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Also, a lot. Thank you. So thanks so much for joining me. This is David Siev, the director, and members of his family, Jaclyn, Chun, and Rachel Siev, who are all stars and subjects of the new documentary Bad Axe, which screened at South by Southwest, and it's going to be screened at the DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival on July 17, 2022. It is an honest, heartfelt, and just kind of gut-wrenching but also fulfilling documentary about an immigrant family and their struggles of dealing with the pandemic and COVID, and also the societal unrest that we had in the last few days in a small town, and also trying to run their restaurant and keep their family together. It is just a poignant reminder of just how far we've come, and also just a beautiful story as well. So thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, of course. So I guess the first thing I should mention is I watch a lot of horror movies, and I don't watch trailers or read about movies before they come up. So when I started Bad Axe, I was like, this is going to be interesting. Like, oh, this is a very, very different movie, but maybe it had just a little bit of horror, but also it was such a fun surprise. So thank you for making this film. The first question is for David. How did you start this journey? Was it really just like everything was shut down and you just kind of had time and just this need to do something, and so you started filming, or was there some kind of other influence that kind of forced you to start documenting this experience that you had?
So yeah, that's a good question, because the answer is kind of both. I always wanted to share my family's story, and really that of my parents. My dad being a Cambodian refugee who came here in the late 70s, and my mom being a Mexican American woman, and these are just two hardworking, passionate individuals who don't really have anything beyond a high school education, that they really laid this foundation for this American dream we all built together as a family, that being the restaurant. And it's been such a journey getting the restaurant to where it is today, and to where it was, even before the pandemic. And I knew that was a story I always wanted to share, was that story of resilience and really the story of the American dream. So yes, I had all this free time, and I knew I wanted to share that story. So it really started off with me just sitting down with my parents every day, going through photos. You kind of see it right at the beginning of the movie, where I'm just asking my dad to kind of talk about all these old photos I found. And it was really just this whole oral history lesson of how we got to where we were today. On the flip side of that, I was also just an unemployed filmmaker with all this time in my hand, and picked up a camera. And there was this other part of filming that was going on where I was just filming life every single day as it was, knowing that it was an interesting time, but also because it was, to me, it was like, wow, here we are, all of us, as a family together under one roof, for the first time since we were all in high school. Here we are as young adults. What an interesting time to just be under one roof and to just capture all these memories that, kind of like home videos, I guess, except I was shooting them on a big cinema camera. And then I think, where the story begins, where I guess those, the footage of my parents and all this history of the past and all the history of the present, where it really began to converge was when I realized oh wow, everything that 2020 was bringing, was we were facing head on with the pandemic and racial reckoning and a very important election. I think I realized in the edit, and as I was living through these moments, was that, oh, here we are trying to keep that same American dream alive in today's climate. So that's pretty much how the film, the genesis of it, how it began to come together. Was that, yeah, I wanted to tell this story. So I sat down with my parents, got all their interviews, but then I was just filming life every day as it was. And then in the edit, I just kind of saw, the parallels, I guess, of the past and the present, and that's how we have the story of Bad Axe.
I love that you kind of wanted to sit down and tell your parents' stories, because that was a really fascinating part of this documentary, just kind of where your parents came from and kind of everything they went through. Because, I probably should do that with my parents. You forget that your parents had lives and had interests, and your dad is a badass and was a badass, and like all of the things that they've gone through. And so like that was an awesome use of pandemic time. But then I also love that you were filming this, just the things that were happening, because I commented in my review, like when I was watching it's been so long, I forgot kind of how uncertain we were at the start of the pandemic, and kind of how little things would change and how your attitudes would change. And so it was interesting and a little sad to go back and like relive those parts and see kind of how far it's been.
Right. And I think that's why, I went back and forth. We went back and forth in the edit so much, trying to determine, should we put the month cards in it or should we take them out? And to me, like those month cards, like I think when we think of March 2020, we all know those feelings and everything that's happening in the world. And we think of April, we're kind of just in the, we're still kind of warning, when is this ending, and just kind of starting to accept, life as it was. And then May comes around, and then June. So like those month, placement cards, I think they bring me back to a certain moment in that time. And I think it brings the audience to a moment back in time as well too. So that's, it's interesting because the pandemic was something we all, 2020 was something we all went through together, and you're seeing a very specific, experience, a very specific lens of this entire year, that being our family. But then I think, as specific as it is, it's so relatable to everyone in this country who, because again, we all went through this year of uncertainty, together as a country, together as a world, even, right? Like,
yeah. And I think, to your point about the month cards, I think that was very crucial as well, because, like the start of the pandemic was huge, and then kind of seeing the incremental changes, and then the racial reckoning that started and is still kind of going on in America, like that whole societal unrest, that was like 3 months in. Like I'd forgotten how close in time that was to the start, just how kind of tumultuous that time was. And so I think that was smart to have those month, markers to just kind of see like, oh my God, look at everything that's changing, and look at how it's affecting this family and this, their lives and their business and everything. So I think that was a good way to frame this.
Thank you.
And so I guess for the rest of the family, did David ask to film you, or did he just kind of start filming like, oh well, that's just David doing his thing, like we'll let him play filmmaker while we kind of do, live our lives and try to keep this business afloat? Like how did that conversation happen?
I have to say that when in the beginning, when one day or two, you don't mind how they put the camera and you see what dads do or see what mom do, and when we go for bike ride and things like, I don't mind. But this whole entire filming thing, that when David started glued to his camera and get on your nerve, to the point that's like, put the fucking camera down, dude. I got things to do, and your brother and sister have to help out in the restaurant. When there's a time when the restaurant was, short of help, we need somebody to help, and here's David running around with his camera. When we get into a deep conversation, argument and fighting, and here he is, and nobody wants to share that, right? As a parent, you're kind of like, this is really private, this is really private between me and your sister, or between the argument with me and your mom, have some important discussion. But do we volunteer help him do that? No, because he would just happen to be the kid that never quit. He just like, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. His passion was willing to take a risk that may beat the crap out of him at the time. So.
Well, as an Asian American son named David, I think we get a little bit more leeway to do what we want than maybe other members of the family. So, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. Jaclyn, what about you? I mean, a lot of the film starts with you, and at the start, I was like, is this like is Jaclyn the star? But no, like it kind of hits every member of the family. But a lot of it starts with you. What was it like to, I guess, like you are very honest, you are very open during this film. Like, was that just kind of, did you forget about the camera, or was it just, you decided like, I just want to show the the true nature of this film, I want to show the true aspects of this family?
Honestly, I don't see, I see David when he's walking around with the camera. It's just your little brother, right? Like it's my little brother who he's a filmmaker and he wants to die. But like as you can see, it doesn't affect the way we carried ourselves, right? Because obviously there are moments where whether my makeup's not done or whether I say something that, I wouldn't typically say in public maybe. But to me, it was just like having my little brother there following you around. Sometimes it was noticeable that he's following you around, and sometimes he's kind of there in the background. You don't really notice it. But for me personally, I just always looked at him, whether he had a camera or not, as like David, the little brother who is into filmmaking. So let him do what, who knows if forever. David's known for in this family for he volunteers to take all of our family photos every single holiday, but you never see the photos. He has a big fancy camera that, so I kind of thought maybe this will happen with, all the footage that he has too. He's going to film all this and then he's going to put it on a hard drive and no one's ever going to see it again. So I didn't think much of it when he was, when he was filming at the time. It was just very, I guess, natural for us it's not natural to be in front of a camera, but it's natural to be in front of your brother, I guess. So
yeah.
And Jaclyn was really supportive in the sense where she's someone who likes to hold on to memories too. That's always really important to her, is like filming every happy birthday, filming every Thanksgiving dinner, just having these memories. So in that sense, Jaclyn was like, great. Like, we have all these, family memories, and that's why I think she was, I think out of everyone like who's just been supportive, throughout the entire process, it really has been Jaclyn, because for her it's just like, great, now we just have 300 plus hours of
I love it. Yeah, exactly. I used to set up a camera just to videotape our family Christmases, just because I remember specifically after my mom passed away when I was in junior high, and that was before cameras and iPhones and all this, this is before all these things were common to have. I always wished as an adult that I had more footage or more things I could go back on if I wanted to hear her voice or just see, how missed family members were just in normal times. So yes, David is, I love that day. I was very supportive because I was like, great, one day we can go back and watch, what.
That's kind of like the greatest treasure, for me, at least for this film, is like, yeah, the film itself, that's something we get to share with our kids and generations to come. But it's also just like the raw footage, right? Like all the moments that didn't make it in the movies where, I mean, I think there is like 300 plus hours of footage. I had to cut it down to 100 minutes, right? But like we have all those memories, and I think that's kind of the greatest thing, I think about, decades from now, is just being able to go back and look at all the raws and just see more into these, this moment in time.
I think, one benefit is now, Jaclyn, you can give this movie to your therapist and be like, look, this is, I wasn't lying. Like, this is the situation. And they'll be like, oh, like,
exactly. Right. Exactly. I mean, even with, with my boss at work at the time, I was telling him about the, everything that was going on, but, with the shutdown and then with the neo-Nazis and Bad Acts, that was, I was like, I know this sounds unreal, but the FBI just arrested like a leader of a national leader of this white supremacy group in Bad Acts. So yes, I do, have that as evidence as to what but it was just, it's kind of crazy how things unfolded, and you wouldn't believe it if, I mean, obviously it happened and it made national news, but a lot of things, it sounds unreal until you see that like it was all captured on film as it organically happened.
Exactly. This is one of those things where like, if this was a movie, like a Hollywood movie, you'd be like, there's no way that, a family this diverse with, all these different viewpoints struggling during the pandemic and all this stuff happened. Right. Like that's unbelievable. Like you have to like simplify it up. But yeah, this is quite a story.
Trust me, we have people that still don't believe it because they haven't seen the movie yet. So unfortunately.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to see it soon. I imagine that this will run multiple festivals, then probably have a wider distribution. But
yep.
I know you can show in this interview, like, yes, it did happen. It was that crazy, and you should definitely check it out.
Right.
And the film does have some instances where people were like, essentially, darn it, David, like, why are you filming? How many times did you have to edit that out, David? Like, it seems like there were some instances where people were like, why did you film that? And I think in retrospect, it was really good. But how how frustrating at times were some of these stressful moments when you had David behind the camera filming this and kind of like documenting it, or was it just one of those instances where you're like not even thinking about it because everything else is going on?
I think I was not even thinking about it because a lot of it I didn't see until the actual the documentary was, you know, almost finished, and I was quite surprised at a lot of raw footage he had in there.
You know, in the how do I say it? As Asian American, and I'm a little bit more of the old fashioned, you know, I'm 60 this year, and we don't think anything alike, right? And that when David started filming, that's the only part that I tell him, you don't ever come near my bedroom. That's because, you know, a lot of time with this important conversation between me and my wife, and we get in, you know, fight and big arguments and all that. I tell you what, at the time, if I would have let him come into my bedroom and come to my bathroom, he'll be doing that too. But I say, don't think about it, because you know what, you're going to be in real big trouble. I don't want to use any word that, you know, that inappropriate. But at the time, he was so glued to his camera. You know, this is the kid that it will not put that camera down no matter what. And, you know, look back now, compared to then, after you see the movie, you're kind of like, wow, you know what? I'm glad he did put that on, you know, sometime. But also there's a lot of part that I'm glad he didn't put them on, the part that we don't allow him a full access to our bedroom, you know.
Well, but I do think like some of the, like, I do love that he was capturing everything, because one of my favorite scenes, it's kind of a weird scene, is Chun, when you are out like cutting wood and putting it in the stove and using the flamethrower, because I was like, you know, you don't seem to be like, you seem to be a smaller person, but then you're out there with this axe just like chopping into this log and throwing it in and just like using a flamethrower like it's just a normal day. And I loved kind of like your nonchalant attitude, and also how it showed like how you had to survive in, you know, this climate and this temperature, and just kind of like your normal day-to-day life, how much work was involved in it.
But you know, we live in such a small town, Bad Axe, Michigan, and then, you know, using wood to heat up the home is pretty common, you know, because this is the part that are, you know, propane is really expensive. So where do we find a way to heat our home? There's a lot of snow sometimes. And that's the part that, you know, at the beginning, it's like, you know what the fuck would you want to film me? Put wood in the stove and chop the log, get the, you know, out of the way. And that's why I don't want to use those words. And he's kind of like, you know, everywhere I go, I'm on a tractor, he put the camera on it. So I'm kind of like, this kid is unreal. I mean, it's just, but you know, living in a small town, if anybody know Bad Axe, it's a town that have less than 4,000 people through the whole town. In the whole county, if we're lucky, we get 40,000. I mean, you know, combine all the town together. And it's really, and here's a town too that when my children started getting involved with, you know, speaking up, right? Being really brave, really being really outspoken. It was scared the hell out of me. Here I'm living in a town that almost like a capital, a headquarter of the Michigan militia. If you're thinking about Bad Axe, Michigan. And here's Jaclyn and Raquel and David. They were such an outspoken, you know, as a parent, you think different. You know, I don't want to say I'm a chicken because I've been through all of the, you know, all the ugliest part of the world, what happened. I've been through it. I lost 7 members of my family during the Cambodia. And then I kind of like, when I see my kid start to get really outspoken, really supporting the movement, really dedicate, you know, dedicate their courage without fear. It as a parent, yes, it's a really scary moment for me. You know, to say that I'm not would be lying.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also have other concerns as well, because, you know, Bad Axe is a small town, and
yes,
your restaurant caters to everyone, and if people are outspoken, even though you're not treating them any different, like that can change. And this movie does also show just kind of like how the society and interactions with people changed in such a short time and such a kind of like turbulent time. Sure. And so, you know, I applaud you for, and your wife and your whole family for just kind of like allowing your children to express themselves even though there were, and there are probably still like negative repercussions to the whole family and to the business, like that was a very brave moment in the film. And when I saw that, I was like, I don't know if I would, have done that in my restaurant, like changed, some of the slow, or change like public support and things like that, just because of the implications. So that was, I understand your fear.
You go to a grocery store and like 90% of the people know you, and it was a challenge when it first came out, and being the front of the house, it's not always going to be easy going. There's challenges.
And as far as being a parent during that time, we would like to say that we want to raise our children to let them live their life, to do the right thing in their life. But, when come to deal with our livelihood at the time, operating the restaurant, take us so hard to get to where we at. And why now they are so, outspoken, and when the whole town is that, do they have share the same belief as we are? Most likely not, right? Not most of the people that are living in the town during that time frame, during that unrested moment, what our country went through. But also at the same time, as the Asian Americans, really rare that, a moment that you're gonna say, look, I spent so much time trying to teach my children. I think it's about time that I'm gonna trust them and listen to them for one. And it'd take a lot. It would take a lot to say, well, let's see what our children can teach us this time. It was pretty hard, really hard to accept that part.
Yeah, I can imagine that is my children have not really taught me much, other than like I should probably be more outgoing and kind of listen to them more. But I can imagine like your children teaching you new kind of bigger, more impactful, and potentially dangerous lessons. So that
Sure.
That was a good thing to document. One thing I was wondering, this film does show kind of how this time, at least changed some of your relationships with the townsfolk and with the town in general. Like, has the release of this film continued that, or is the release of the film actually maybe more healing? Maybe people will kind of see kind of the final work and see like, how this is a film about both bad acts and the family and kind of the struggle that was happening during that time.
Since we actually did have a screening in Bad Axe, we brought Bad Axe from the Bad Axe at the very end of May or June 1st, I think it was. But we did it, we had a local screening at our Bad Axe theater, and I will say that it was very healing, I think, for us and for a lot of the people that came. Even the screening was primarily for like the donors that help with the fundraising and everything when we were doing the kickoff, but we were able to open up the invitation to some of the public. And I will say that some people were able to attend who maybe were skeptical or maybe not supportive initially with the idea of showing our town of Bad Axe and kind of what we went through. And I will say that we have had multiple people come up to us afterwards and say, like, wow, this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And I am so sorry that, we didn't support you guys in your family or the business. We're so sorry we doubted you, basically. And saying thank you for opening our eyes to like a new, to your perspective, and understanding that, the story of Bad Axe is from our perspective, and it's our story, and it reflects Bad Axe in a lot of good ways and in challenging ways as well, but very similar to how I always say this, but like to how families are. Like, look at our family, look how different we all are in all of our personalities and beliefs. I mean, as you can see, my dad and I have a couple arguments sometimes, but
really
right, but at the end of the day, we're still family, and we still love each other, and we still come together at the end of the night and eat dinner, whether we don't talk for the first 10 minutes or what, but we all have the same end goal. We all just want what's best for our family. We just have different ideas of what that might be. And I look at, I always say that I look at that as a reflection of like Bad Acts, and then even on a larger scale, a reflection of our country. Like we can all be different and have our own different beliefs and personalities. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of us just want what we think is best for our family or for Bad Acts or for America. But it shows that like, despite your differences, you can, still come together and not just, you can come out stronger, which I think our family has come out stronger since the film. And I hope that I think that the people in Bad Acts that have seen it have been very proud as well of, understanding that we express our frustrations that we have with the town and the challenges, but also our love for the town, right? Like we chose to live here. We chose to have a business here, and we still love Bad Acts, despite, with the good and the bad. So, and no, it's been good so far.
Fingers crossed. And I think, you're right. Like I could see people when they think this documentary is gonna be made about Bad Acts, I could see them thinking that's gonna just paint everything in a negative connotation. But when you're watching the film, like it's kind of an unvarnished, view of the film, the good and the bad. And there's a lot of good in there. Like, you see people interacting, you don't really care what their political beliefs are. You see the protests that occurred in Bad Acts. And I didn't think a protest, a BLM protest would occur in Bad Acts, but like it's a fairly sizable protest given the size of the film. And then you also see supportive community members who like love the restaurant and supporting your family and the good and the bad of that area. So I think to your point, when people do see this film, I'm sure some people will think it paints in a negative light, but I think I hope the majority of people will see that it is just an honest documentary about this area and the struggle. So
right.
So I guess that's probably a good point to switch to. I call it the lightning round. They're just very like lightweight questions about the film. I want to see how your personal experiences map to things that happen in the film. Now this film is about you personally, so your personal experiences will be maybe mapped in the film entirely, but I try to keep them very answerable. If you don't want to answer any of them, you can feel free to pass. I will not be offended. So the first question was going to be, will your movie be shown in Bad Acts? But I guess that actually happened. So there we go. What was the last movie that you saw at Bad Acts that was not this film? Like maybe the last film you took in the theater.
I was actually just in Bad Acts last month, and I saw the new Jurassic Park movie.
I'm sorry that was your last one.
I'm pretty good friends with the theater owner in Bad Acts. His name is Mark, and as soon as I walked out of the theater, he was like, "What do you think about that?" And I said, I thought it was entertaining. And he's like, "I'm so sorry you had to like watch that."
Yeah, that was something. Anyone else recently at the Bad Acts theater?
The last movie I saw in Bad Acts theater was the latest James Bond's movie. And I think that, I love it. I'm a big James Bond fan.
I was not happy with the ending.
Yes, she's not happy with it.
I didn't know that was
when
going to
James
happen.
Bond died. So she's all bumming. But that was the last movie that Rachel and I went together, to watch that.
What about you, Jaclyn? What was the last movie you saw?
I don't remember. I don't know. It was before the pandemic. What?
Didn't we see The Father there?
No, you might have.
Oh,
you go more than off. David doesn't live in Bad Acts, but he still goes to the theater more than I do. So
I don't remember better than any of us.
Yes, he does.
The town is so small. Sometimes we just go to the theater just to buy popcorn and we leave.
Well, honestly,
if you want to get a movie style popcorn, you go into Bad Acts theater. Right?
In the Bad Acts theater, and we love it, but there's only 2 movies that show, and there's only 2 times it shows. So it's if you can't go right at 6 o'clock or right at 9:30, then you can't go. So,
well, but who sees a movie during the day, anyways? Except for like apparently me and David. So
right, exactly.
This question is for Jaclyn. Does Mike still have have, or has he redone the porn stash that you had? That lovely.
He has not yet, but after seeing the support that is garnered, he's wanted to bring it back, and we have not let him bring it back. Well, not that I have any control, but he has not brought it back yet. I think that it would be his dream to bring it back for, probably the next Bad X premiere or something. Who knows what he has in mind.
That would be a good, Kickstarter stretch goal, right?
Fun fact,
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep.
That's the last scene that I added in the film. That was a very we were about to lock picture, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, we never see the whole family just laughing together, like all in one room laughing together. And the mustache scene, I'm like, you know what? Like, I know people probably will think like this just needs to be cut out, like this is pointless, but I'm doing this for me, and I put it in there, and it seems to be resonating.
People love it. Yeah. Yep.
Well, that reminds us when during the height of the pandemic, I had like a full beard. It looked awful. I had like whatever man bun my thinning hair can establish. Like, I looked like garbage, but that was just part of the pandemic. That was part of what was happening. So this question is for everyone. If Austin made a drink for Raquel when she finished her finals. What was that shot? Because it was just straight tequila. Was there something special? Is it a family recipe?
Straight tequila. Straight tequila. It's that seems to be our go-to shot, and everyone thinks it's because we love tequila, and we're not. I don't know that anybody loves tequila. It gets the job done. So yeah, straight tequila. I will say that Austin is not the best shot maker, so he plays it pretty safe, and we'll just go straight for the tequila typically. We're lucky that he shook it over ice and didn't just pour it into a shot glass. So
he's got to class it up, right? It's her last final, right?
Oh yeah. Yep, exactly.
When it is just the boys, we tend to do Fireball, but when the sisters are involved, we do tequila.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I would think that was the opposite, but hey, you know what? It's fine. What is your go-to sushi order? Because the sushi night was a beautiful scene. So I'm just curious if you have like a go-to sushi order.
I have to say the surf and turf, and that is something that we kind of like know that Bad Act is agriculture town, right? You have a lot of people like meat. So that's when we say, you know what, this is going to be our new creation. We take the prime rib, wrapping around the the shrimp, and we can call it surf and turf. So that would be the go-to order.
Yeah, I agree.
So you get a combination of prime rib and the seafood together.
Yeah. I don't eat sushi, but if I do eat sushi, it's a surf and turf roll, because it's just shrimp tempura wrapped in prime rib with hard, spicy mayo on top. So
that sounds lovely. If I'm ever there on sushi night, I'm definitely gonna try that.
Yes. Sometimes it's a joke. I'm gonna say, David, you know what? We should try hot dog and Cheeto.
Why not? Why not? Just go for it, right?
Yeah.
Really?
They're a lot of fun. Yeah.
You gotta have limited time promotions, right?
That's right.
Yes, I'm sure it'll go over very well.
You have to cook the rice in the hot dog water though to really give it that flavor.
Roman hot dog and sprinkle with Cheeto.
Yeah,
top it with ketchup and mustard,
I'm hungry. Anyone else?
I hope we don't have any sushi chefs sit there and listen to this. They will flip out.
Well, they can open a competing restaurant in Bad Axe and see how it goes. So
that is right.
What is your favorite thing to eat at Rachel's?
My favorite dish at Rachel, I have to say my Cajun shrimp pasta. I order that quite often. When I it's so comfort, it's so tasty. I go in there, I get that Cajun shrimp and pasta.
Perfect.
I'm gonna say I was gonna say ribs, but I know that's probably David's favorite. So I'll go for the bacon cheeseburger. Really good.
Yeah, my mom knows me. Half slab of ribs with French fries and Brussels sprouts. That's my go-to order.
I am a medium rare ribeye, fresh cut ribeye with white rice. if it weren't for my love of steak, I could be a vegetarian, but steak is the only meat I crave. And I love our ribeye.
And you know what? Our most popular dish is still our rice bowl.
Oh,
our rice bowl is the one
Yeah.
that we sell so many of them.
Yeah.
And it
Yep.
just please everybody. You got shrimp, you got steak, you got salmon. So
Pork
that'll
belly.
be,
Pork belly, yeah.
yeah.
oh, that sounds delicious. And the film kind of starts with, some hints that maybe there was a family vacation right at the start of the pandemic. When was the last time you all took a family vacation? Was it recently, now that everything's opening up, or is it still like you can't take a vacation because everything's so busy and the restaurant?
You know what?
It was-
That was the last time our family took that vacation together, believe it or not, when we have the whole
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, that was, and you know what, the ironic thing is, I had begged we've never taken a whole vacation for more than a day with the entire family, because someone always has to stay back and watch the restaurant. And to go on this cruise, we planned it a year in advance because we had so much fun on my sister's for her honeymoon, but my mom couldn't come to that. So I was like, let's bring the whole family and go on a cruise, shut down the restaurant for 1 week. I promise once we get back from the cruise, we're going to cater so many weddings. We're going to, do sushi night every single, I was like, we will make up for that. We lost time, because closing for a week is a big deal for a restaurant. We've never done it before. And the very first time we ever did it, the following week, we found out we had to shut down. So the irony, but I guess at least we got a family vacation in before the
at least you got
craziness
it.
started. But yeah, that was really our first and our last.
Well, it seemed like a lovely one. We were supposed to go to England the week that everything shut down, so that
Wow.
kind of
Oh,
didn't happen.
no.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Oh, it happens. So I know that you all have limited time and you all have busy lives to lead. So the film is Bad Axe. It's screened at South by Southwest. It is also screening at the DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival on July 17th, 2022. You should check it out. I'm sure it'll run the festival circuit and then, be available wider, but definitely see it if you have a chance. This is David, Jaclyn, Chun, and Rachel Siev, who are all involved in the film and subjects of the film, and David was the director. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
And we can share that, the film has been picked up by IFC. We actually sold it right after South by. So it will be in theaters and available on streaming before the end of the year. We don't have an exact date yet, but you can look out for it, near the end of 2022, I think. So
That is fantastic news. Awesome. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. That was David, Jaclyn, Chun, and Rachel Siev of Bad Axe, which is screened at the DC Asian Pacific American Film Festival on July 17, 2022. I imagine it'll screen at some other festivals before getting a wider release. It is definitely something you should check out. It is a kind of an honest, gut-wrenching, and an interesting and introspective documentary kind of about how the pandemic and the last few years of just societal unrest affected a small town restaurant and the family that runs it. It is just fascinating, and it's also just kind of an interesting reminder of how far it has been since the pandemic started. It feels like such a long time ago that I had kind of forgotten some of the original uncertainty of what's happening, how do we prevent this, how do you stay safe. And this film brings it all right back, but also tells just a wonderful immigrant American story. So you should definitely check it out when you can. If you're in DC, you should check it out on July 17th. If you're not in DC, just kind of keep posted. I'm sure it'll be running the film festival circuit, and then eventually we'll get a wider release. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And if you're in the Bad Axe area, the Michigan area, you should definitely check out Rachel's. Thank you.